All right, so my friends at Produce Like a Pro asked me to check out the Antares Auto-Tune Unlimited bundle, so that's what we're going to do today. So just so you guys know, Produce Like a Pro is currently running a giveaway where they're going to be giving away the Antares Auto-Tune Unlimited bundle. I think it's to 16 people. So 16 people are going to win. And I believe one of the winners actually gets 3 years of the Antares Auto-Tune Unlimited bundle. So I'm going to put links to that in the description below, as well as to the bundle so you can check it out. So check out the links in the description. And this example that I'm going to use today, I'm going to at least start with this example. This is my friend Evan's song. And I'm using this example because I actually used it. We did this as an exercise, but I actually used this for another video on another company's automatic tuner. So I think just for the sake of the parts of this video where we look at the automatic tuners within this bundle, I'm going to be using this example just so you can compare the two if you really want to. I'll put a card up on the screen to that other video for you guys. And that's the reason why I'm using this example, really. Other than that, we're not really going to be focusing on the tuners so much because there's a lot of other really interesting and really fun and really wacky in some ways plugins within this bundle that I want to dig into a lot more than just the tuners, right? We've all seen the tuners. We've all known about the tuners. There's some more interesting stuff in here that people aren't really, I don't think people are really talking about enough. I don't know. So that's what we're going to do. So this track is just vocals. So this is kind of, I think, what I'm going to be focusing on for the most part. And I just duplicated my vocal track and I'm going to be adding these plugins onto this track so we can kind of check it out and experiment with it. So I'm just going to go to the Antares section here. If you didn't know, if you go into setup and then preferences in Pro Tools, you can actually change how your plugins are categorized. So you can categorize by make and manufacture like I have here. You can do categories, stuff like that. You can do both. But I'm going to go into Antares here. I wonder if I'm saying Antares right. Is that right? I don't know. So we have the auto key plugin. What that does is you just put it on your track and it'll listen to your track and tell you what key you're in. That's pretty handy. It can be very useful to have. I am not super interested in that today, but I think it's a great tool to have in your toolkit. So it's great that they include it in this bundle. And then these plugins here, Access, Artist, EFX is a effects processing plugin, but Hybrid and Pro, they're all just different iterations of their auto-tune tuning plugin. So the Pro is the one that actually has the graph view on here. This is really handy because you can actually tune specific words, specific notes, one by one. You don't have to set an automatic tuner and hope that it hits the right note or hope that it knows what note you are going for. So this is really, really helpful to have this type of tuner in your toolkit if you don't already. I know that a lot of companies are making automatic tuners out there that are really great, that are really fun to have, but it's really useful to have one that has a graph option as well. But then when you're on the automatic mode in Pro, it's very similar to a lot of the other tuning plugins within this suite, right? So we have Access is very similar. It just has fewer options. You have, the tuning. It shows you where things are falling. You have the keyboard. You can choose retune or humanize. The big difference between, along the spectrum of tuning plugins is like the Access version. This has fewer options, right? So you have off, minimum, or maximum. It's not a continuous knob that you turn. Same thing with retune speed. So this could be really handy, I think, to use if you're tracking, right? You just want to throw it on and get something down quick. I could see this being really handy. My guess, I don't actually know this, but my guess is it might take less processing power, and that might be the benefit of having this in addition to having the Pro version. But I don't actually know that. Maybe someone can answer that in the comments below. I don't know. But let's go back to Pro. So there's this whole spectrum, right? From Access, Artist, Hybrid, and then Pro. So let's just listen to it a little bit here.
I know it's hard to believe when we talk about the weather, it never lies. I know it's hard to believe when we talk about the weather.
It almost sounds less human to me when you crank both up here. Let me crank up the vibrato.
I know it's hard to believe when we talk about the weather, it never lies. I know it's hard to believe when we talk about the weather, it never lies. I know it's hard
kind of like it with less of the natural vibrato option here. I kind of like that.
I know it's hard to believe when we talk about the weather.
It actually sounds pretty good, even with a high retune speed. Or I guess it's a low retune speed, right? It's a faster retune speed. It actually sounds pretty good. I kind of like it. So those are the tuning plugins within the suite. Now let's go on to the more fun, more interesting, more exciting stuff here. So let's start with EFX. So this one reminds me of some other plugins that I really love that are designed to do vocal effects, right? To give you wacky and fun and interesting and a lot of modern and unique vocal effects. And I really like it so far. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to kind of cycle between the patches for you guys. What it does is it populates different effects processors here. So you have the regular tuning function from Auto-Tune, right, that we know and love. And then it adds these effects to the signal chain. And you can toggle each one on and off. You can control it with the XY controller here. There's a lot of control that you can have over how it's doing this stuff. But let me just mess with it a little here.
So I stand in double light. 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 So I stand.
You get like a really out of pitch double here or a really out of time double here.
So I stand in double light. 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 So I stand.
I like how it notifies you what the X and the Y parameter are, and it just very clearly lays it out for you here. And you can toggle it on and off each individual thing with this power button here.
So I stand in double light.
So if you just want to emulate a tube amp, you know, it going through a tube amp, this is one way you can do that. Let's hear some stuff that's a little more complex. This one sounds interesting. So see how you can have multiple effects here on this plugin. So you can have pitch and throat, mutate, and vocode all at once in a chain. There are other ones too that it'll throw up here, but let's listen to this one.
So I stand in double light. So I stand in double light. So I stand in double light. So I stand in double light.
Ooh, let's listen on this phrase.
When we talk about the weather, you never lie. When we talk about the weather, you never lie. When we talk about the weather, you never lie.
Oh, that's kind of a cool distant sound.
When we talk about the weather, you never lie. When we talk about the weather, you never lie. When we talk about the weather, you never lie.
Oh, it's kind of overwhelming. Let's listen to this.
I know it's hard to believe when we talk about the weather, you never lie.
That's kind of cool. Broken speaker. What's it got? Pitch and throat. Mutating it with a ton of modulation and not very heavy in the mix. Tube amp, crunching it pretty extreme on both ends, drive and compression. And then a filter. Let me see. It sounds like a male double vocal with effects on it. That's what it sounds like to me. It's kind of cool. So you can get like this whole range of different sounds with this plugin. I probably shouldn't waste too much time on this because I want to look at some of the other ones too. But it's pretty cool. So with a lot of these plugins that aren't just the pitch shift plugins, the pitch correction plugins, it seems like what they're doing is they're combining something like that pitch shift or pitch correction technology, the pitch shift, pitch correction DSP. A lot of them use the same exact DSP as you have in the other pitch tuning plugins that they make. And what it's doing is it's combining that with some way to like mess up the sound, to like chop it up, slice it up, reverse it, sample it in different ways, change it, crunch it up. There's just a million different effects that you can add on top of their, signature tuning and pitch correction stuff. And it seems to me like they have a lot more detailed controls over how you do these things, right? So it kind of feels like to me, like a lot of these plugins feel kind of like a Swiss Army knife of pitch shifting, pitch correction mixed with a bunch of different vocal processing of some sort. So I think it's kind of cool. And I think it's neat how you can get this whole range of sounds from, things that are emulating vintage sounds that we'll see in a little bit, all the way to more modern sounds, right? Like a lot of us are familiar with nowadays. So with that said, one of the fun ones is Slice. Let me open this one up. I was messing with this one the other day. I haven't had this plugin I haven't had this plugin suite for very long. I've only had it for a couple weeks or so. But I've been messing around with it a little bit. So with Slice, what you do is you have the system read in whatever you're working on. So I'm going to highlight that section. I'm going to go to edit. I'm going to hit record. That's the record enable button basically. And then I hit play and it loads it in.
When we talk about the weather, it never lies.
And that's it. So it loads in your audio and now you can mess with it. So what it does is it slices up your audio into these different chunks and you can control it based off timing, based off pitch, based off transients. You can control it manually, right? So I can just click and drag and change how everything's sliced up. But then basically what it does is it maps these slices onto a MIDI keyboard. So you'll see how now we have these little waveforms here. And if I hit play on the keyboard, I can hear my different slices. I can move it around. So you have a lot of control over how things are done here. And what you can do is there's this whole auto tune section, right, to control the auto tune. I won't dig into that. We're all pretty familiar with that, I think. You can add effects to them here as well. So that's a ton of fun. There are a bunch of presets that you can mess around with. You can really get lost in this. I got lost in this for a little while the other day. And then you can mess with how these are played back, right? So you have this option here where it's forward, but you can also do it in reverse. You can do it. One of my favorites is forward to reverse. That's kind of cool. You can do loop forward and loop reverse, right? So if I hit play, that's kind of cool. One shot, just single time. And I believe this is based off your tempo in your piece, right? So it's cutting it off after a certain amount of time passes. So you can see how you can get some really fun effects with these. Let's see, there are other controls that you can mess with here too. And then you can also switch this into chromatic mode, which is something I got kind of into here. So if you switch into chromatic mode, it takes whatever slice you have highlighted and then it maps it to the keyboard. And you'll see the R here shows you the original pitch. Oh, I'm going to switch back to forward reverse, just so we can kind of hear a little more. So it gives you the ability to change that on a chromatic scale. I think that's pretty awesome. And there are also a lot of presets here. So let's mess with a preset. Let's listen.
I could hold. Could hold tight, hold, could I.
So it looks like it's actually loading in samples for you too. So you don't have to load in stuff from your actual session here to mess with it, which is really great. You can really quickly get some samples in and then really make them your own by changing all these different things. I mean, I know that there's still someone else's samples, but you could really change them and modify them and have some kind of artistic effect on the thing. So I think that's really cool. So yeah, Auto-Tune Slice. It lets you slice up whatever you're working on, slice up samples, add a bunch of effects, tune them, change how they're played back, put them on a chromatic scale, all kinds of stuff. It's a lot of fun to mess around with. I could get lost for an entire video in just this plugin. But let's move on to, we also have, there's a de-esser, so I could show you guys that really quickly. It's a really great plugin to have in your toolkit. And it's a good example of how this Auto-Tune Unlimited software, they were really thinking about the complete vocal effects processing, whatever you would want or need, and then they tried to put it into this bundle. So it's great to have a de-esser. They have one in here. I'm not going to dig into it too much. I kind of wanted to mess with the weird stuff. But one thing that I was really drawn to was the mic mod plugin. So this one's really cool. Let's look at this one next. All right, so this is pretty cool. It's just a simple mic modeling plugin, right? So what you do is you set your input mic. So let's say I don't have any fancy microphones, but I have a 57, right? I can record with my 57, set that as the source mic, and then I can try to mimic something like, let's say, Cole's 4038. Let's try that, because these, we'll hear the difference. Let me just find a section to play.
So I stand in double light, making pictures with my hand.
So this source microphone here, it wasn't a 57, but it gives you the idea, right? When I hit bypass, you can really hear it bring out that ribbon warmth and cut a lot of that high end that ribbons just don't pick up. So it's really cool for that. Another cool thing that I noticed is if you mess around with which microphones you're either emulating or using, if the microphone has something like a switch on it to change different parameters on the actual microphone. So Shure SM7, that's what this microphone is here in front of me. And this one has switches on it. So you can actually mess with the low cut and stuff like that. So you can actually change those parameters here in the plugin. So similarly, another one that a lot of people have is the C414. And that one has buttons on it, right? So we have those options here within the plugin as well. So that's kind of cool. I really like that. And I could see this being really handy for people who are maybe recording in a bedroom with cheaper microphones. You can kind of try to get closer to the effect of having a nicer, fancier microphone a little bit. You could also use it to really change the sound after the fact. Sometimes we use one microphone and later we're like, oh, I wonder what it would have been like with this other one. Or, you can really sculpt the sound that way. The engineer in me really likes this. Let me switch this back. What do I want to try? I'm going to switch it back to the Coles and just mess with it a little bit because it also has this tube saturation effect here I want you guys to hear.
So I stand in double light. So I stand in double light.
So you can get that like gentle tube distortion a little bit if you want. Get that tube sound a little closer to that kind of sound. The other thing I like is we have these proximity options. So if you crank this up.
So I stand in double light.
You get that proximity effect, right? So we call it the proximity effect in audio. When we get closer to a microphone, we get more of the low end. So you can kind of hear that. You can kind of control it, make it sound like the microphone was at a different distance from the sound source, on both ends. So let's see.
So I stand in double light. So I stand in double light. So I stand in double light. So
let's say I recorded with a 57 and they're pretty close to the microphone, like 6 inches away. I could set it like this. And then let's say I wanted to sound like I had a Coles room microphone. I could see myself duplicating this track and then having this iteration here to make it sound like I had a Coles microphone a little bit farther away in the room. That's kind of a fun use for it too. So I'm really into this. I've been having a lot of fun messing with this one. I think this one's a really cool one for them to have in this bundle. Even though it's not as complex as a lot of the other ones, I think it's really cool. So another one that's really cool here that's in this suite is Vocodist. And so what this does, I'm actually really thankful that it has this. It has a walkthrough for you to show you all the different parameters. And there are so many different parameters you can control with this thing. But all it's doing is it's basically like, it's like the real plugin in here that's definitely a Swiss Army knife, because you have all these different vocoder models that you can pick from, and then you have so much control over how it affects your audio. So I'm just gonna hit yes and kind of show you what it shows you. So it helps you do your little setup here, gives you some info. It asks you if you want to start with presets. You can start here. You can set your input type like soprano, alto, etc. It tells you to set the key. So maybe I'll change this a little bit. I'm just doing this off the top of my head, and I haven't looked at this session in a while, so hopefully that's right. I don't really remember. And this is cool. So they have 20 different vocoder models, and I think all of them are supposed to be well-known, well-loved vocoders that people have loved throughout history. And I think this one at the bottom, I think this is the one. One of them is it's modeling one of the original like 1939 military design vocoders. So I think that's really cool. So, you can pick between all these different presets. They're just mimicking different vocoders throughout history. It shows us where the oscillator is, the output effects. So we have a lot of effects we can mess with. And then it brings you into the whole thing. So here we are. I kind of like just messing around with different presets until we get somewhere that we like. And one thing that I've noticed is you have the different filter bands here in the filter section. If you bring this down, it sounds more vintage, it's fewer filters. And then you bring it up, it'll sound more like modern, more like hi-fi, so to speak. But you can mess with the amount of filters. You can stretch it so they're farther apart from each other, and you can slide them up or down. This gives you a lot of really fun effects. I'll play it here so you can hear it. What's the default? I think the default was like 10 or something. Anyway, you can go deep down a rabbit hole. I just zoned out for a while doing this. I'm probably not even going to put that in the final video because I got like a little too zoned out into it. But you can mess with this a lot. You can change so many parameters in here. You can really sculpt the sound to make it how you want it. And it's really cool that it's mimicking these old vocoders that we all know and love. I didn't even fully set this up, but I just wanted to show it to you guys. See that it's there, talk about it a little. It's really cool. I think it's really cool. And it's cool. It has this XY tracking pad here, so you can change parameters quickly and efficiently. And it has auto-tune. It uses the auto-tune software in here, but then it also has this whole range of different parameters that you can control. I know I keep saying that, but it's got like this XY pad, so you can manipulate things in real time. It's got so much that you can mess with, that you can dig into, that I don't even have time for in this video. So it's a really great plugin. You should check it out, especially if you're into that vocoder sound. And I didn't even hook up my MIDI controller this time. So there's a lot in there that you can mess with. Oh, you know what I want to look at? I want to look at duo, and then I want to look at throat too. So duo lets you add doubles really quickly and easily, and then throat lets you change. It's kind of mimicking different actual body shapes and types, right? So duo, let me show you that really quickly. It's like a doubler. It has a little more control than most doublers I've seen. So let me just play something here for you. You can change the pitch variation and the timing variation just to make it sound a little more human. People usually aren't exactly on pitch or on time. And then you can change the timbre of it. Timbre. Anyway, you can change the vibrato. I'll just mess with it so you can hear it a little bit.
He has no shadow. He has no shadow. He has no.
You can make it real dissonant by cranking it up here.
He has no shadow. He has no shadow. He has no shadow. He has no shadow.
kind of like it a little lower here. And then the cool thing is you don't have to like send this to an aux track or anything. You can just mix it in here. So you have a fader for the double and a fader for the original. So let me just hit play.
He has no shadow. He has no shadow. He has no shadow.
So you can kind of tuck it away in there and you don't have to create a whole new track just to put this plugin on, which is kind of cool. And then let's look at throat. Throat's really cool. So we're actually changing like throat length and throat width and stuff like that. So you have the length, the width, you have a high pass filter, right? You can add in breathiness, which actually can get really extreme. And then you have these settings for the source, right? So you can actually tell it what the source vocal is like and it'll adjust accordingly, right? And then you can adjust what you want the model version to sound like. So I'm just going to mess with it a little bit for you guys to hear.
I know it's hard to believe. I know it's hard.
I'm going to change how I highlighted that because that was an awkward spot to stop.
I know it's hard to believe when we talk about the weather. It never lies. I know it's hard to believe when we talk about the weather. It never lies.
You can get some really wacky sounds out of this. It's so cool. Let's see it.
I know it's hard.
Ooh, and then the level matching's really handy, right? We like it when we have level matching in a plugin, so we know that we actually like the changes we're making. And then we also have the output fader, right? And then we have pitch too, which allows you to change the pitch. And I think last time I looked at this, it seemed like it was in semitones. Let me...
I know it's hard to believe when we talk about the weather. It never lies. I know it's hard.
You can get all these really cool effects. It's fun. So that's throat. Let me see what else I wanted to show you guys here. Let's take a look at Mutator before we call it. I think this video is getting kind of long. I think you're getting the idea though. There's like lots of different plugins in here that lets you mess with things. And I would put a lot of this stuff on guitars and other instruments too. I wouldn't just put it on vocals. But you know, it's kind of designed to be used on vocals to begin with at least. So this one's cool. It's a voice designer. So it's kind of, in my mind, it's kind of similar to the throat one, right? And you're just controlling different aspects of the voice. This one lets you get a lot more synthetic stuff, if I'm remembering properly from last time I used it. So it lets you get really weird sounds and really effecty sounds that you then might want to mix in with the rest of your thing. So let me just play with it a little so you can hear it.
I know it's hard to believe when we talk about the weather. It never lies. I know it's hard to believe when we talk about the weather. It never lies. I know it's hard to syllable. About the weather. It never lies.
It's so much fun. You just can just mess with the thing to make a totally new effect to put behind the vocals or instead of the vocals, or you know, whatever you want, whatever effect you want. It's so much fun. This one's pretty easy to use too, I think. Oh, and one thing to keep in mind with this is that the odd numbers on here are atonal. I believe it's odd. So if I'm remembering right, the odd numbers tend to be more atonal, and then the even numbers tend to be more musical sounding, more, I mean, there is atonal music. Is that fair to call it musical? More traditionally musical sounding. So let me hit play. So hear how it gets a little more dissonant when you make it an odd number. It's kind of interesting. But anyway, that's the Mutator. And I think that's basically it. I think that's all we have time to look at today. But there are a bunch of other plugins in here that are a ton of fun to dig into. It's a really great suite of plugins. I'm really excited to have it now. I'm definitely going to be using this to make weird effects, to do sound design, to process vocals, to do a range of things, I'm sure. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you might use these plugins for, or maybe what you have used these plugins for. I love to hear it, especially if it's like an unusual use or creative or weird or interesting in some way. Let me know in the comments below. And let me know if you don't have this suite, what you might use it for if you were to win the giveaway. Because again, Produce Like a Pro is doing a giveaway. They're going to be giving away the entire Antares Auto-Tune Unlimited bundle to, I believe, 16 people. One of you guys is going to get 3 entire years of this bundle. So that's awesome. So check out the link in the description to that. And if you do enter, good luck. And other than that, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I really appreciate all that stuff. I come out with new videos every Wednesday, and I do have a Patreon. So it's patreon.com/CatoNoise. My patrons get access to additional content. We have a Discord server we're all hanging out on. And I really appreciate all my patrons. I'm becoming friends with a lot of them. They're really cool people. So check that out if you feel so inclined. And other than that, I come out with new videos every Wednesday. And thank you for watching. Okay.